Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to use JSON, right? So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and in this tutorial, we're trying to explore different Python libraries that we can use to work with JSON. So the commonest one that we know of is those that come with a standard library. So we have JSON, we have simple JSON, we have uJSON, we have orJSON, and there are a lot, right? So it is very useful when you are trying to design an API to render your data using JSON, right? Which is now mostly used by most REST APIs. So that's one of the use case. In case you also have some configuration files, you can also pass them as JSON and can also be used to store data. So let's see what we're doing in this course. So by the end of this simple crash course, we're trying to see how to use these libraries to be able to serialize or convert data from one object, right, from JSON object or JSON strings to Python dictionary and vice versa. So let's see how to start with it. So this is our data that we're trying to work with. So I have my string here, which is what I'll be using, right? So let's take off this and then use the one above. So the difference between JSON and then dictionary is that it's in JSON strings, the key is just the same thing, key value, but the keys are mostly in double quotes, right? But in dictionary, in Python, they are in single quotes by default. So let me pass in these things, and it's failing because we have to also import some libraries. So let's import NumPy, because we also want to check the different data types that we can serialize, and then data type. So let's also import date time, right? Okay, so we have these things, and we'll try and see how to use the first on our list, which is JSON, which comes with a standard library. So let's work with using JSON. So let me make it bigger so that everybody can see. Yeah, using JSON, and then we'll be first trying. So first, import JSON, and let's see the various methods of JSON. So this is going to be the methods and attributes of JSON. So DRL JSON. So with JSON, you can create your own encoder decoder. You can dump, right? You can load. So the load with S means you are loading from strings, right? From JSON string to Python object, right? JSON string S to Python object, and the load is just from a file to a Python object. That's the basic understanding. So the one with the S means is from JSON strings to a Python object or Python dictionary object, and then the same thing. So let's see how to work with it. So we already have our data that we had. View our data. If I check for it, which is the JSON str, this was what we had. And then as you can see, I can make it better. I can just see the type of this. And the type of this JSON string is a string, right? So I want to convert this particular string into something that we can use in Python, right? So that is the first one. So how to convert from JSON string to Python dictionary object. So how do you do that? So the simplest option is just you have imported JSON. So you first import JSON, which we imported, and now we are going to specify the Python object that you want. So Python Dict object, so that we see the difference. And I'm going to pass in JSON dot load, right, with the S. Then I'll pass in my JSON string. If I go with this option and now I print it out, so Python Dict object. Now this is now converted from the double quotes, as you could see, these ones which are here, now to single. So that this shows that this is a Python object, right, a Python dictionary. So if I go back and I check for the type of this, my PyDict object, you can tell now it's a dictionary, right? And since it's a dictionary, you can do all the methods, all the manipulations of dictionary. So we can check for the keys of it. So we can check for keys with my PyDict object dot keys. It also give you all the keys. There's only one key. You can check for the values, right? And the rest, you can do everything that you want to do. Perfect. this is useful. So that is how to convert from JSON string to Python object, and then you can now manipulate it as you want. So in case you want to do some other basic manipulations, so I can just go with the same. Since it's a dictionary, right, I can pick the first value of it, pick the key, which is author, or I can just, it doesn't matter, right? This is going to bring the entire data, and this is now in a list. I can now get out of this list, which is 0. Yeah, I can't see my, yeah, and now I can get the first value from our dictionary, right? So I can get the first value here. Perfect. So that is one of the ways that you can use JSON to convert from JSON strings to Python dictionary object, right? And you can do any manipulation you want. So this is also another dictionary that you can also iterate. Perfect. Let's see how to, another thing that you also notice that, like in the previous one that we had, which was this one, if I print this one again so that you see it well, this was a string, right? You could see that there was true here, right? And there was null here, right? And false. But when it's serialized, the true is converted to Python's original true, right? And then the null is converted to none, right? That is something that it does behind the scenes. Serialized is converted to the right format in the particular language. Okay. So let's see some other stuff you can also do with it, right? So in case you want to convert a Python object, right, to JSON string. So let's say I have a Python dictionary into a JSON string. How do you do that? So we have my Python dictionary, which was this. So this is to convert from the dictionary to a JSON, right? JSON string. So how do you do that? So this is where we use the dump, right? So dumps is going to be used to do the same thing. So I can now just go straight away with, let's say, my JSON string 2, right? And then I'll just go with my JSON.dumps. Now pass in my this object, right? And now if I print this one out, you can see that now this is now in JSON string, right? With double quote. So the first one was single quote, but now it's double, right? As you can see from here, right? So that is how to convert from dictionary to JSON string. And then you can also make it beautiful. So there are a lot of things you can do. You can not just dump it, you can also indent it or format it all. So formatting using indentation. So we can do the indentation, right? By in this option, you can just pass in the indent. So indent, then you specify the space, right? How many ones you want, how many levels. And if I go with this, now you see that this is in a nicer format, right? I can make it 4, I can make it 6, right? And you see that as I do this, it is changing, right? So you can also indent it. That is a nice format. The other thing you can also do is that you can also sort it. So this is for the indentation. You can also sort it. So I can indent and I can also sort the keys. So sort keys is equal to true. The idea behind sorting key is that in case you are about an API and you want to make the keys easy for you to know which comes first alphabetically, you can specify it. And as you can see, it starts with ID name books, but because you are sorting the key, books come first before ebooks, and then HTML and the rest, right? So you can also sort the keys. Perfect. That is cool, right? Now, how do you convert from the dictionary to a JSON file, right? So this is now a file, not just a string, right? So how do we do that? So how do you convert it from this to an actual string? So the simplest way, or an actual file, is just open the file. So with open, then I'm going to pass in the name of the file. So let's give it, like, let's say, data, right? Or you can call it as JSON data, something like that, .json. Then I'll just pass in what I want to do. I want to write it, so as f. Then I want to now dump it, right? So this time we are using JSON to dump this particular. So we are dumping whatever I want to dump. We are dumping a particular object. So we want to dump this Python dictionary object to my file. and now it has created it. If I go back and I check it here, so let's check it out. Let's refresh. This is the one. You can see that it's giving us this nice format, right? My Python Jupyter Lab is rendering it in a nice format for us, right? Which is very cool. If I open it with a different editor, so I can try it with a different editor. So if I try it with a new editor, you can see that it's here, right? So that is another way you can also see that. Okay, so you can, when you're also dumping, you can also do the same thing as we did. You can also specify the indentation like these ones so that it becomes better. You can, so the other one we saw was not looking good. This did not look good, right? You can also indent it when you are dumping by passing in the same option that we did, right, as we did above, right? So you can also do the same thing. Okay, so that is how to convert from dictionary to JSON. You can also do the same thing. So we have the dump to one file in case I want to read it, right? So let's say I want to read the entire stuff, to convert from JSON file to Python dictionary object, right? In case you want to read, right? Read, you just have to just go with the same thing, change it to R for read, then you just use load. So I'm going to put it here inside my new data. So let's call that new Py dictionary, and this is going to be my data that I have. So JSON, right, dot load, not loads, then I'll pass in whatever thing I want to do. I'll pass in the F. So let's make sure that it's correct. And if I run it, now I have it here. And if I go back and I check it out, you can see that now it is there, right? Perfect. So this is now in a Python dictionary, right? That is good. That is JSON. So you have seen how to work with JSON. Let's see some other stuff you can also do, right? So where does the other libraries come to play? Where does uJSON, orJSON, simple JSON come to play? So these things, most of the things you can do with JSON, but sometimes if you have a lot of data and you want to be faster, then you may resort to a different JSON library, right? But with JSON, you can do most of the things, right? Most of the things you can do. So let's see where these ones come to play. So I have this data here. As you can see, this was here, right? And then we were able to, so where does these other libraries come to play, right? So let's see how to do the same thing with what we have, right, with this data. So we have some NumPy data and some time series data, right? We want to be able to convert it from how we did with JSON, right? And then we try and see the other libraries. So we had this, our data, which is this. And if you run it, perfect, right? I want to work with it. I want to be able to pass this because this is a dictionary and I want to convert it to a string or something different, right? So in case I want to do that, I'll just go with the same option we're doing. So in case I want to convert from the Python dictionary object, right, to JSON serializable, right? JSON string. How do I do that, right? So in this option here, we already saw that in case you want to do, I can just go with JSON.dumps, right, with S. Then I can just pass in my data, right? I can use this one to move from Python to JSON, dump data example 2. And if I do that, it's going to give us a type error, right? Because it cannot serialize datetime, right? So it could not serialize it. So how do you fix this issue, right? So the simplest way of fixing this issue is that we have to make sure that we are converting these ones into something that it is serializable. So luckily with JSON, the first solution is solution number 1. You can use, if I go with JSON.dumps, there is this option here, which is the default. So the default, with the default, you can actually, these are all the things you can do, but with the default, you can specify that, okay, if there's any object that cannot be serialized, I want you to use a particular default for those things, right? So in this case, I want to, in case I meet this error and it's not serializable, I want to use a string, right? So you can use that one to fix that issue here. So let's try and see how to do that. So just go with this. So JSON.dumps, then I'll pass in the data example. Then I can now pass in the default is equal to string. So in case it finds it and it meets that error, see that now it's converting the entire stuff. So it automatically converted the time that we had created that to the right format, right? Which is very cool, right? And also the OK status was also converted in a Unicode, and then the rest, right? So that is one of the ways you can fix it. But the other solution is that you can also use a different library. So you can use uJSON, or you can use orJSON or JSON, right? So let's see how to use them. That is where the other libraries come inside, right? In case you have some complex stuff you can't do with this and you don't want to use this, and you're considering the speed also, you can also use this. So let's try with the first one. I want to try with orJSON, right? So in case you don't have, you can just install with this. So pip install orJSON, right? And then you can use it. So using orJSON, so you can do the same thing that we did. So if I go back, let's import it first. Import orJSON, and then let's see the methods of orJSON. So there are orJSON. So it has the same thing. So JSON decoder, encoder. It has these optional stuff you can do. So in case you have a time, UTC time, and you want to use those conversion to serialize, in case you have a NumPy item that we have, right? We had NumPy here, which was this one was NumPy, and there was date time, and you also want to convert them, you can also use these different options, right? So it comes with all of these options out of the box that you can use to serialize them. So let's try the first one. So I'm just going to go back to the same data that we had, which was this data, and then we want to use uJSON to convert it, right? So I'll just go back again, and then if I go straight away with uJSON, or not uJSON but orJSON, if I go with this option, it's going to fail, right? So it's not serializable, but the solution is just to go back with this and then specify the options. So there's on options, right? And then with the options, you can specify that, okay, I want to use some of these options. I want to use, let's say, UTC or NumPy serialize to serialize that particular field in case it finds that particular data. Right, so in that case, we can just go with, we have this naive UTC for the time, because the time could not be serialized, and there was also NumPy. So option, then I'll just pass in my orJSON dot this, and then I can also pass in pipe another option or another, or JSON dot, we want to use NumPy, so opti serialize NumPy. So we have data class NumPy UID, and now with this option, now we can serialize it, and this error is going to go, right? So if I run it now, I see that I serialize it. The difference between orJSON and then the rest is that orJSON mostly converts to bytes, right? So that is why we have this byte here, right? So it converts Python dictionary object to string, and then to bytes, right? To actually bytes. So in case you want to read, you have to read it from byte option, and this makes it faster. So later on you benchmark it. So you can also do the same thing as we saw. You can load dumps, right? These are the only thing you can't load from a file, and I'll just only dumps and then loads, right? Okay. So in case I store this into a dictionary, so in case I want to store it into a dictionary or into a byte, so let's go to byte data, and I'll pass in this, and in case I want to read it, I can just go with orJSON dot loads, then I'll pass in my bytes, and now I can get it back, right, in a nice format. Perfect. So that is how to read or load file, right? Perfect. There is no loads. This does not exist. It is loads and then this option. Perfect. Okay, so we have seen when to use orJSON. Now let's see when to use uJSON. uJSON is also a very nice one. In case you have a lot of data that you want to pass, uJSON is also one of a very good option. So let's see how to use and when to use uJSON. So uJSON, just as JSON, also comes with a lot of things more than orJSON. So in case you don't have, you can just install with this. So to install, so pip install uJSON, right, in case you don't have it. And now let's import it. I've already installed it, so import uJSON or JSON, that is the full name. And then let's check the methods of it. So the methods, so that we get to know what we have in the box. And now see, I have the decoder, we have decode, encode, we have dumps, load, right? So it has the same thing like JSON, but it has some other stuff that I can also do. So back to the JSON string that we had, which was this. We can still use uJSON to load with S and then dumps with S, right? You can do the same thing. So in case you want to convert, so let me copy the code above and let's try it, because it's the same syntax which was here, right? So I can copy in case I want to convert from JSON string to Python dictionary object using uJSON, right? You can also do the same thing. So instead of this, we just go with uJSON, then uJSON, right? So this is another way you can also do that. So if I run it, we have converted it, so it still works, as you can see, right? It's able to still do the same conversion. It converts the data that we had, which is double quotes to single quotes, as you can see from here, and it also does the same stuff that we did, right? So null to none, false to false, right? It does the conversion well. Perfect. There's also one thing you can also do with uJSON, is that in case you have this string here and you want to rather escape it, right? You can also escape. So escape HTML characters. You can also do the same thing with JSON, but with uJSON is quite simple. You can just go with uJSON dot loads, then I'll pass in my JSON string that I have. If I run it, we have it like this, right? But I can also escape it. It's still there. I can escape it with escape or encode HTML. So encode HTML. Then I'll specify that, okay, I want to encode it, right, when I'm doing it. So this is right. So in case I want to escape HTML when I'm converting from, not from strings, you can't escape with that, but I want to convert from Python object to JSON. So that is from object to JSON string, right, using the dump. You can also do the same thing, so dumps. Then in this case I can escape, right? So let's put it inside something new, so we call this new JSON string. And now if I go back and I check it out, so the new JSON string, you can see that now it has done some conversion, right? It has escaped a lot of things, right? And if it's not looking nice, you can also do the formatting. You can also format with the formatting, so not just escape, you can also format via indentation. You can also do the same thing as we did. We have it here. Let me print this new JSON string. In case you have any question or contribution, you can put it in the comment section below, and then can I go with the indent. It's go to, let's say, 2, and it works, right? It's not looking nice, but let's make it better. So the reason it's failing is that I'm just converting a string. I'm dumping a string again to a new string, but I have to dump the object. We already specified it here. Python Dict object. Yeah, this is better. And now this is better, right? So just done the proper JSON conversion, and I can also do the same thing here. So that explains why the formatting was wrong. Let's go back again and then try it, and now you see that this is better, right? So you can also do the formatting, you can indent it, and you see that I just converted the one that we had, which was here, this, just escape them and now put them in the right, in a different format, right, that you can pass to avoid attacks, right? Perfect. So that is uJSON for you. Now let's see one more thing you can also do. Let's see one more thing I can also do with uJSON. So I'm comparing uJSON and PyJSON, right? And then we also do the same thing for the orJSON. So we have uJSON, orJSON, and then we want to do the same, this orJSON, for the escaping of slashes, right? So if I go with this option, by default, JSON standard library already escapes, gives the right one, right? No error. And then orJSON converted to byte and it escapes it. But uJSON also just use this slash, right? Which is totally different. In case you want to skip it or to render it like this, you can also come back again and then specify that, okay, I want to escape. There's also escape slashes, in which you can also use to escape it, right? So by default, escape this one, there's an argument here which is already set to false, to true. You can just go with this, and now you see that all of them have been escaped. So that is a different that we can do with uJSON. Perfect. Let's try uJSON now with our conversion for this particular data that we had, the data that was with NumPy, this data. Right, we had where is it? Yeah, this particular data that had NumPy. If you remember some time ago, here, so that we had this NumPy with NumPy stuff. We want to use uJSON on it to see how it's going to be, right? So that at least we are fair for all of them. So using uJSON on other data types, right? So in that case, I'm just going to paste in this data that we had, which is this NumPy, and I want to use the JSON to see how it's going to be. So I'm just going to uJSON, right? This is a dictionary, right? I want to convert this. This is a string. I want to do the conversion, so I'm just going to go with. So it's going to be my dumps. Then I'll pass in my data. Example 2. And then let's see, it's going to fail, right? Because it's still the same thing, right? So you can also fix it just as we did previously. You can also do the same thing like you did with JSON by just going default equal to string, and it's going to convert it, right? Very cool. So that is the 3 different libraries we have tried: JSON, standard library, uJSON, and orJSON. Perfect. Let's do one more important thing that we can also do. So in case you have a dictionary that we had our Python Dict object, and then I want to remove the HTML, right? How do you drop it? So this is how to drop or remove a key, right? And value from this particular JSON dictionary that we had, right? How do you do that? You can look through them and then delete it. Let me show you how to do that. So it's going to be for my I in my Python option, right? Then if I print out my I, you get only authors. So now I only want to get that particular author key, which is author. And now you get it looping through. I want to remove this HTML, right? So how do I do that? So I can simply remove it from the entire data set by, after looping through it, I can just say, okay, if the data is there, so it's going to be my data, right? Dot pop, because this is a dictionary, as you can see, and just go with pop or del. So pop, then I'll pass in the key that I want. So the key I want to remove is HTML. So I want to remove this key, which is this key. Then I'll just specify none, so that in case I didn't find it, just pop it out. And with this option now, it's just remove it. If I go back to my Python option, you can see that the HTML is no more there, right? So that's one of the ways you can use to remove or drop a key from a value, right? Perfect. One more thing we can also do is how to serialize a class object in Python. So how do you do that? Right, with serialize here in Python, serialize a class object into, let's say, JSON Serializable. So let's say I have a class called author, right? And then I'll just initialize it. I'll put in self, I'll put in ID, I'll put in name, right? Something like this, something very basic. And then self.id is going to be my ID, and then self.name is going to be my name. In case I want to serialize this, the self, and then let's make it like a return. So let's use a string. So author, right? And then we just use a string to make our work easy. I can just pass in my self.id and then self.name, right? In case I want to serialize it, so for example, if I create an object, so create an object. So let's go to my object. Then I want to serialize it to author, or just create a simple object to one, and then the name, so Mark. Oh yeah. In case I want to convert this one to convert, if I print this one out, this is a string. It's supposed to be. So let's go with my print, this option here. Yep, right, it has converted it perfectly well into this option. In case this is not the best format, but we can make it better. Sorry for this. We need to make sure that this is in the right format. We have name is go to this, and then ID is go to this, right? Apologies for going back. Yeah, and then this we have it better. Okay, so in case we want to convert this one to JSON, right, I can just go with JSON.dumps, then obj. One moment, I want to dump this one to JSON, right? I want to convert or dump to JSON, right? Serializable. If I go with this, it's going to fail. It's going to tell me that that object of type author is not JSON serializable. How do you fix it, right? So how do you fix this simple one? So this, the use case that in case you want to build an API, I want to use something like that. The simplest way is that you can just go back to this same thing that we had, right? Copy this and then use this option. You're going to create another method here. So let's call this method as toJSON, which takes in self, and then you're going to pass in the following. So let me copy and paste to save us time. So you're going to, since you can convert these things, right? By default, this an object. There is, I think, it. By default, every object in Python, every class object has this dict method or attribute that allows you or unpacks the attribute, right? The instance, the attribute. So with this same idea, you can pick this stuff, right, and then convert this one into JSON, right? Just as we did earlier on. So that is going to be this, because as you could see from, if I pick this here, let's copy this, and then let's do JSON.dumps. It works. This option works, right? This option works. So saying this option is working, you can also use the same thing here. So you're picking the entire stuff, unpacking it, and then getting the dictionary of it, and then running it. So now I can take back this object that we created. So let's go to object number 2, not this one, but the other one. I'll copy this, and then let's create another one. So 2. And now I can now say, okay, object 2 dot toJSON, right? This is a method, and now it has serialized it, right, perfectly well. So that is how to serialize a class in Python, right? Using, in case you're trying to serialize and it's giving you that object is non-serializable error. So thank you for watching this long and exciting tutorial. In case you have any question or contribution, you can put it in the comments below. And then one more thing before, let's benchmark it. So the benchmarking is based on system. So benchmark is based on system, right? So benchmarking is based on system, performance, your purpose, whatever I want to do. So it mostly is useful, but I prefer to use a use case instead of the speed or the performance. So I had a simple code that we can use to benchmark what you have done so far. So let's try with this code, which goes with there. So we pass in the data that we want to benchmark, and now I can just go back and then try it with this option here. So I just benchmarked it, right? And you could see that orJSON is very fast, right? Based on how it is going, because orJSON only picks byte, making it closer to the code, and then it works faster. As you can see, the default Python JSON is also good, but it gives us this option here. And then this is not the right one, it's supposed to be uJSON. So let's run it again. So let's see the result. So Python is 3, right? The default standard Python is 3 seconds. And then for uJSON is 1.4. Right? That's what I'm supposed to say is very fast. And then orJSON is very fast, right? But it depends upon what you want, right? Not most, this can be on my system, but this is the simple benchmark. So thank you for watching this tutorial. In case you have any question or contribution, you can put it in the comments below, and let me know your opinion, and let me know any other library you know for working with JSON, right? So apart from these 3, there is also simple JSON, there is BJSON, and then the rest. See you another time. Paka paka. Choose. Bye. JCharisTech.